All right, those cylinder heads are on. They are torqued down. I went through and did one final torque after I did everything else. Now we need to do push rods and intake manifold and exhaust manifolds. However, I failed to order any exhaust manifold gaskets. Idiot. So I need to go to the parts store and get those. Then we'll be back. Or, I don't know. You know what? No, let's just do the intake stuff and then we'll get the exhaust manifolds later. Manifold gaskets. I have the manifolds. All right, push rods and intake. Now, we are reusing the stock push rods, which is just fine. The only caveat to that is I've gone with 1.6 rockers because we're trying to act like we have a little bit of an intake lobe lift on the cam, which still 1.6 rockers are cheating for that, and that's fine. But to make the 1.6 rockers work right, I had to take a carbide bit and open up the push rod hole in the cylinder head, so I've got just a little bit more clearance for everything to slide through and not touch. In theory.
We'll see about that.
I have gone down this 1.6 rocker route before. That was on the Jeep motor we did not too long ago, and that 283 did not like it. So we took those back off, which is why I have 1.6s to put on just the intakes this time. Last time I went all the way around, it didn't like it, and we took them all off. But, you know, it's a different motor, different situation, and we're using half of what we need to use. So put all these down in here, and then we'll get the rocker arms on there. And we're not going to adjust any of the rocker arms right now. I just want to get everything in place. We'll do the rocker arm valve lash stuff later. I want this thing closed up because I'm tired of it being exposed to the weather. It makes me more and more nervous every day that something's going to get in this engine, even with me having it covered. It's not in the garage because there's too much crap in my garage right now. Now, when it comes to putting intake manifold gaskets on the small block Chevys, a lot of people will tell you don't use the rubber or cork little end pieces that come with it. And they're going on right here and at the back of the block. And you know what? They're right. Just use silicone. Silicone these days is a lot better than it used to be. You don't need to use the rubber with a coat of silicone anymore. You do chance pushing those out a lot more than you do with just a nice thick bead of silicone. That's what we're going to do. We're going to use the Ultra Black, which is the oil resistant good stuff that you want for this sort of job. And well, we're going to put it on there. The only other thing I would say is make sure around your water jackets, front and rear, also put just a thin coat. And one more thing before I put these on, make sure when you're doing Chevy intake manifolds on small block Chevys, you use the right block off plate or restriction or nothing at all, depending on your application. What I'm saying is look it up, because on this one, it calls for a restriction on the driver's side and it needs to be open on the passenger side because we have a thermal choke. So look up your application, put the correct piece in, and then go to town. All right, that intake manifold is on. It's torqued down. Look up your own manual and make and model for the specs on what your torque is. And next, what I did is I've got this thing set up on top dead center. Hopefully we can see the timing marks here in a second. And I've got it on top dead center so we can get that distributor put back in. When we do it, the rotor should roughly be pointing sort of this way towards number 1. There's not really a trick to getting the distributors in, but make sure you put a new gasket on when you do it. And those gears have to mesh, and we want it to be sort of towards number 1. Watch. There. That's all the way down, and that's pointed about number 1. There we go. Wires over here, vacuum advance over here, plenty of room. We're pointed at number one-ish. Pretty good. I'm going to put the carburetor on next. And we're not going to worry about any wiring, anything else yet. I just want to seal up all the holes because I don't think we're going to get this thing started today. So, carburetor, I'll put the valve covers back on it, and I need exhaust manifold gaskets. There we go. Just had to get around the corner. There we go. Now we can do carburetor. Oh, don't forget that throttle bracket when you're putting that on there. Otherwise, we'll be taking it back off again. So put the throttle bracket on. You don't want to over tighten the base of this carburetor because you're going to warp it. You don't want to over tighten the top of it because you'll warp it. So snug is good. I know we've still got some valve lashing and whatnot to do, but I'm not going to be able to get to that right now. And I don't want anything falling in this engine, so we're just going to lay these valve covers on here. Not bolting them on, just laying them in place. There we go. It's about day 4 or 5 of me putting the cylinder heads and intake back on this El Camino, and I'm getting kind of tired of doing it, basically. So today I've taken a couple hours and I put everything back on that I took off in time lapse at the beginning, and it's going to save a lot of time. So here's what we've got so far. Carburetor's hooked back up, AC pump, alternator are back up and plugged in. All the vacuum hoses have been plumbed. Spark plugs are in, spark plug wires are on. Distributor is ish. It's going to be close. We'll definitely have to move that around to get this thing started. I've got some coolant in it. I checked the oil. There's still oil in it, which we haven't changed yet, but we will eventually. And what else? I tightened down the exhaust manifolds. They're torqued to whatever it calls for. I don't really even know. Same thing with the intake. Doesn't really matter. I think I've got everything hooked up. Hooked the battery back up. Nothing caught fire or smoked. So that's good. So I think what we should do now is we should try to start it. Can't tell if that timing is late or early. I'm going to go with I don't know. So we'll go that way. That seems like a major adjustment. Seems like a major adjustment. That was pretty close. Good guess by me. I think we should let this thing warm up because that started way easier than I thought it would. All right, this thing is warmed up. The choke is mostly open. I don't see any leaks, which is nice. That coolant there is from when I put this hose back on. That's not an actual leak, at least not currently. There's smoke coming from this side, but that is the brand new exhaust manifold, and it's just burning off whatever it was that they shipped on it to keep it from rusting. So that's nothing. And it's just running smoother than it ever has. Check this out. Here's a gear wrench. This is a very rounded edge wrench. And I'm just going to put it right here on that carburetor. There we go. And it's not even moving. That's about as smooth as this thing could possibly run. That smoothness could mean one of two things. One, we did a great job and the timing's really close. Two, we did a terrible job by putting 305 heads on it. Now it has absolutely zero power and barely any compression, so there's no compression to make any vibrations. Guess it could happen. I don't think so. I think I'm going to hope for option 1. I think timing's close and we did a good job. This is hard to see, but we've got the timing at about, I don't know, what is that? 17 degrees right now. That's pretty close. I mean, we could knock it back a little, but we also did some performance mods on it. So, well, performance mods. So I think we should leave it at like 16, 17 right now and see what happens because it seems really happy. Our total timing is at 36 right now, which is not bad. All right, so there we go. The El Camino is back together. 305 high output heads, 1.6 ratio rockers on the intake only. Everything else stock. Only thing left to do is I'm going to have to let this thing warm up, make sure it doesn't leak, and then we'll test drive it. And then what we'll do is we'll get some performance numbers. And by performance numbers, I just mean we'll do a 0 to 60 at some point, because from the factory, that's like 8.5 seconds, I think, 0 to 60, and we'll see if we can beat that. If we can't, no big deal, but if we can, real nice, Clark. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today. I'm going to let this thing warm up, keep looking for leaks, and I'll see you next time.